Ben, I feel like this is maybe the best division in the game in terms of prospect talent.
Hmm.
I like a majority of the teams in this division. I feel like at least three are slam dunk top 10 farm systems in the game. I feel like a fourth is probably a top half. And then the fifth, I feel like is not bad. Just feels like more middle of the road. See what you think about the tiers. Man, the NL Central is really, really good in terms of prospect talent.
I think the Brewers, even after graduating Jacob Misiorowski, now they were our number one farm system in midseason when Misiorowski
Mhm.
was prospect eligible, but I think it's still a really, really strong system right now.
Yeah, it does seem quite strong. A lot of hitters at the top, a couple of really exciting arms. I think also probably worth you maybe expanding a bit on the piece you wrote today about the Brewers draft strategy. They seem to have done a really nice job targeting high school players after the 10th round specifically. I thought the piece you did was really a thorough read. It really lays out exactly what the Brewers have done. And you make the case that like other teams should maybe be doing this because there's a lot of value to be had in these ranges with those sorts of profiles. I like that the Brewers are doing this because since we've gone to the 20 round draft, since we've removed some minor league levels, there is just an incentive for teams to avoid high school players altogether. There are fewer stops for them on the minor league development ladder. And I think there are a lot of teams that have seen such quick returns from the college demographic. And you can make a case that, like, post top 10 rounds, there's just a lot more certainty in what you're getting from the college demographic. The Brewers, more than any other team, seem to be really targeting high upside high school players. Maybe that's a conversation we'll get into later after talking about some of the top prospects here, but I think just definitely worth highlighting and encouraging listeners to go check out the piece you wrote today that kind of went out, or not today, yesterday, I think it was, when the Brewers list went live.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Brewers just do a lot of good things throughout their entire organization. If they're not the best, then they're at least in that conversation for the best international scouting department in
Mhm.
baseball. You can see that with if they got Jesus Made as their number one prospect, and you sign Jackson Chourio, who has this incredible rise through the minor leagues, gets to the big leagues when he's 20 years old, and you're thinking like, yes, like this is the franchise cornerstone player that you sign out of Latin America as an organization maybe once in a decade, and then 3 years later they sign Jesus Made, and he might be just as good as Chourio. And obviously, it wasn't just Made. They signed Luis Peña in the same class, but Made looks really special. He's 18 years old. They bumped him up to high A after he was in low A. He's basically the same age as these 2025 high school players. And when he gets to high A, he's even better than he was in low. He's 343, 415, 500 in 123 plate appearances. As an 18-year-old, he's finishing the year with a cup of coffee in double A. So I got to think he probably is starting the year in double A next year as a 19-year-old. And that puts him right on track to make his debut, just like Jackson Chourio did as a
Mhm.
20-year-old. And I'm sure if he hits in double A the way that we expect him to, I'm sure the Brewers would love to lock him up to a Jackson
Mhm.
Chourio type contract extension.
Yeah, you mentioned him alongside Chourio just in terms of impact upside potential. He has some of the biggest hit power grades of any prospect that we're going to have in the handbook this year, of any prospect in the minors. He's currently sitting at number three on our top 100 behind only Connor Griffin and Kevin McGonigle. Like, what is your expectation for what he can do offensively and power wise? I mean, is this one of those like just outlier offensive players who has an uncanny ability to make contact with all sorts of pitch types? Is just going to be extraordinarily high level pure hitter who also has plus power potential? Like, this is setting aside any sort of defensive ability. That alone makes him one of the more exciting prospects in the game.
Yeah, as a hitter, this guy, he's the man. Switch hitter, it's loose, whippy, bat speed, rhythm, balance, tight turn of the barrel, manipulates the bat head to make contact and make hard contact with pitches throughout the strike zone. So he's got great hand-eye coordination. He recognizes pitches. He knows the strike zone, makes a ton of contact. Bat speed is there. He can take you out opposite field already as a pretty lean body teenager with
Mhm.
the bat speed and the strength projection left, where you can see him growing into to plus power and getting to that power in games, even with a little bit of a flatter swing path. Like, all right, maybe make an adjustment to get to a little bit more loft to get to that, 25 plus home run guy. But I mean, from an offensive perspective, it's hard to find a hitter who, at 18 years old, is going to check this many boxes that you're going to look for in a young hitter.
Yeah, it's impressive to see just how hard he's hitting the ball. I have data pulled up for all the top 10 hitting prospects in this division, and he's the only 18-year-old to have a 90th percentile exit velocity north of 105 miles per hour. Everything you talk about and the way you're describing, like his pure hitting ability, contact skills, hand-eye coordination, just makes him massively exciting. What are your thoughts on his defensive profile and how he's going to fit on that side of the ball?
I think he has the potential to stick at shortstop. He's plenty athletic. He's quick. He's a plus runner. He has a strong arm. So I think with more work, he could develop into an average defensive shortstop. We saw him make strides this year on defense. The internal clock, like the defensive instincts, those are not as advanced yet. Like, it's not
Mhm.
bad. Like, he's not a butcher out there. He's 18 years old. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I guess, normally you would say about an 18-year-old, hey, like, he's got plenty of time. In this case, his bat might be major league ready in 2 years, so he might not have that much time on the defensive side, especially when we're talking about the most valuable position in the field outside of catcher. But the tools, the athleticism, that's there for him to be able to work his way into being able to stick at shortstop. And if not, there's no reason he would have to move off the dirt, right? He would go,
Mhm.
depending on the construction of your team, either to second base or to third base, and potentially be an above average defender at either of those position. And then the offensive upside is good enough to be a star, whether it's
Mhm.
shortstop, second base, third base, some sort of move them around the infield, whatever you want to do, wherever you want to put
Yeah.
them in the infield. It's a special bat.
Because of where he ranks and who he ranks beside, and because you're doing the Brewers and you've also been kind of the foremost leader on the Kevin McGonigle bandwagon, if you get to pick between Jesus Made and Kevin McGonigle to plug into your farm system, which of these two players are you taking? Because they seem like they have a lot of similarities.
I would take Kevin McGonigle. I think he's just even more. He's just the best hitter, pure hitter in the minor leagues,
Yeah.
even more so than Made. I think Made is a better athlete. He's a better runner. There's some better physical tools that he has, but I just have even more conviction in McGonigle hitting than like just about anybody who's come around
Hmm.
in recent years. So,
Cool.
and I think he's got power too. Like, yeah, he's smaller, but we can see him juice balls pretty good. I've always thought that part of his game was a little bit underrated. So,
Yeah.
um, they're not going to be far apart when our top 100 comes out in January.
Definitely. Okay, circling back to Brewers specifically, after Made, is there a significant gap in him and Luis Peña and Cooper Pratt and the next guys on this list? And where do you view the next few players in terms of like top 100 status? I guess how many players do you see being on the top 100 of this farm system? Which again, at midseason we had ranked as the best farm system in the game. I'm not sure if it's like definitely going to be that going into the offseason, but they would certainly be one of the favorites.
Yeah, I think there's still a good gap, and I like Luis Pena obviously a lot. I mean, we saw a lot of good things from Luis Pena this year. It's elite bat to ball skills. It's one of the lower swinging strike rates that you're going to find in a hitter. And we saw him increase his exit velocities too this year. He was up to
Hmm.
113, which is a good spike from the year before when I don't think he had any over the fence home runs. Um, it's a flatter swing path. It's not a lot of loft, but he's hitting the ball a lot harder. 5'11", strong build. It's not like this wiry athlete, but he is He's very athletic. He's a 70 runner. He can steal a ton of bases.
Mm.
Offensively, the main area that he's going to have to address is the swing decisions because he's super aggressive. He will expand the zone. In the DSL, in low A, it didn't really matter. He can still make
Mhm.
contact when he's swinging at pitches outside the strike zone better than some hitters can when they're swinging at pitches inside the zone. But as you move up, it's harder to make that work. And we saw when he got to high A and Made got to high A, Made's performance took off and got even better, whereas Peña slowed down.
Mhm.
25 games, not a huge sample, but 168, 200, 297 in 109 plate appearances. So he probably goes back to Wisconsin, I think, to start the year.
Yeah.
He'll be 19 years old. He'll be one of the youngest players in the league. Offensively, there's a ton to like, but the plate discipline is the one area, one area on the offensive side where he's going to have to make improvements. So Made is a much more complete,
Mhm.
or is just a more complete hitter than Luis Peña is, and I think there's an even bigger gap where Made is ahead of Peña on the defensive side because Peña has played shortstop. I don't think he's ever going to stay there long term. He got
Okay.
reps at second base, some at third base this year. I think best case scenario, he's able to stay somewhere in the infield, whether it's second base, third base. He's plenty athletic, quick, great runner. The arm is plus. Defense just does not come naturally to him.
Mhm.
Instinctively, he just looks behind. The consistency of the routine plays is not there. Um, he's also 18 years old. So I think you give
Right.
him every opportunity to work on his defense and try to find a home for him somewhere in the infield.
Mhm.
But also, if you're a 70 runner, there's a chance he could go out and play center field potentially
Right.
even. He at least has that kind of speed. TBD if he would have the instincts for center field, especially for the
Mhm.
Brewers, who everybody in their outfield is a center fielder basically.
Yep.
Um, but I think where he ultimately ends up is one of the biggest question marks for him. But again, like for all these, every player is some combination of strengths and weaknesses. For all the time I think I just spent poking holes in this 18-year-old hitter's game. Like this guy is one of the best best young prospects in baseball. There's a
Mhm.
lot of things he does well, especially at the plate and with his legs.
Yeah, I mean, circling back to his speed, he had 39 bags a year ago in the DSL as a 17-year-old, in 96 games. This year in 2025, as an age 18-year-old, 44 bases in looks like 51 attempts. And then also, just to like reinforce what you said about the kind of extreme offensive profile, his zone whiff rate was 12.9% this year, one of the best in that category of any of the hitters that we're going to talk about today. And the chase rate was 32%, just over 32%. So, like, the gap between that contact ability and just how much he's swinging stands out just when you're looking at the data. Um, okay, let's keep moving down this list since you did Brewers, Ben. Who do you got next, and what's the gap between that person and Pena?
Yeah, so Cooper Pratt, is next shortstop. If Jesus Made and Luis Pena and Cooper Pratt, if they all end up becoming what the Brewers want and or hope for them to be, which obviously is something that's a very low probability of all three of
Hmm.
them working out that way. But if it does, then Cooper Pratt is going to be Milwaukee's shortstop of the future. He's the most advanced defender at shortstop. And Made and Pena are probably both better athletes.
Hmm.
Pratt is athletic, but Pena is definitely a better runner. But Cooper Pratt's his internal clock, his nose for the ball, his ability to make the routine plays consistently, his defensive instincts are just really advanced. He also just spent all year in Double A, so he's going to be in Triple A next year. He's going to get to the big leagues first and get that first crack at
Hmm.
taking over the shortstop job in Milwaukee. Um, as far as like how does he stack against them? I think Cooper Pratt is a good prospect. I don't know that he's an elite, like top 25 prospect
Right.
in baseball. I don't know that he's a top 50 prospect either. And I know we have people he might be. I'm not saying he isn't, but because I know we have people on our staff who think he is top 25, or excuse me, who is top 50 and maybe even top 25. I have some more questions about what he ultimately ends up becoming offensively, because you look at what
Right.
he did this year. He hit 238, 343, 348. Now, the Southern League is really tough on offense. It's actually an above average OPS for the league, as like
Hmm.
uninspiring as that slash line looks on paper. And he just turned 21 during the season. He barely spent any time at high A the year before. So he's been pushed pretty aggressively.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's fair, right? But the swing itself is pretty sound. He has good timing. He makes a lot of contact, but he will chase more, a little bit more than you would like. Especially good sliders can get him in trouble. And he's a big guy. He's 6'3". He's strong,
Right.
but he doesn't hit for much power. And it's
Yeah, the way that you're describing him is not at all how I thought he was going to develop when thinking about him coming out of high school, because he had this big frame. I thought he would have more power and be worse defensively than he has become coming out of high school when he was a draft prospect. I think we had like solid average tools for him across the board at that time. And then I was like skeptical that he'd stick at shortstop because he's a little bit longer. He was never the quickest. And I was like, okay, he's going to add more strength to this frame, start hitting for more power. Then maybe he'll move to third. But it sounds like the opposite of that has actually happened, where the defense and the secondary tools have gotten better, and the power really, we haven't seen it yet. I mean, is there any expectation that there's more coming? Is there still some projection to the frame to dream on, or is that power question sort of maybe why you might be a little bit lighter than the most bullish on Pratt?
he's always going back to high school. He's always been a guy with a good swing, high baseball IQ, really high contact guy. But yeah, like when you looked at the body in high school, like, all right, well, he's going to get stronger and fill out and maybe hopefully, grow into more power, kind of perfect world scenario. But right now, the exit velocities are below average. He doesn't have the bat speed where I would project big power to come. Now, could they put him on a training program, change that? Maybe. But let's say even if he doesn't, so what do you have? Some of the parts is still a pretty good player. Um, I'll say you can find people in baseball who are super high on Cooper Pratt who think he is in that top 25, top 30 prospect in baseball group. I'm not to that point on him, but he is a top 100 prospect, like clearly, who does a lot of things well to chip in value, especially at a premium position. And again, like the sum of the parts can end up being an above average player, especially being able to play shortstop like he can.
Hmm. Yeah, he's a fascinating one. I'll be curious what the delta of Cooper Pratt's ranking is among our staff. I would imagine it'll be one of the wider of consensus top 100 prospects. I think his will probably wind up being one of the wider ones, just based on conversations we seem to have about him throughout the year and just the sort of scout feedback that he gets. Okay, it's been all hitters so far in the Brewers system, but they do have a couple arms in the middle of this top 10 between Logan Henderson and Bishop Letson. What can you tell us about these two pitchers, Ben?
Yeah, Logan Henderson still prospect eligible. He's got hurt at the end of the year. Yeah, I think people have seen him, but whereas with Letson, if you've got Bishop Letson, you've also got Tyson Harden, who was a 12th round pick out of Mississippi State last year when he was a mediocre at best performance wise
Hmm.
reliever, and took a huge step forward this year as a starter. So those are the three best pitching prospects in the organization now that Jacob Misiorowski has graduated. And I think you can absolutely make a case for Tyson Harden being in the top 10.
Hmm.
It's just a strong top 10 to crack. And I generally lean toward the more of the hitters over the pitcher, especially since it's a shorter track record with Harden,
Hmm.
and he did kind of fade down the stretch. But Bishop Letson is maybe the highest upside arm in the entire farm system. He's 11th round pick out of an Indiana high school who was a Purdue commit. Just a great job of scouting by the Brewers. He got to Double A this year as a 20-year-old. The biggest red flag with him has been health. He's missed a lot of time in 2024. It was elbow. This year it was shoulder. He did come back. So it hasn't been a lot of innings, but when he's healthy, it looks really good and with a lot of
Hmm.
projection arrows pointing up. So like these guys from 5 to I don't know, even like 11, 12 in the system went back and forth of what order to put them in, but
Hmm.
Letson's upside it's pretty exciting. I mean, he's 6'4", still lanky, long limbs. It's elite extension. I don't mean like, oh, like he gets good above average extension. I mean,
It's
seven and a
like more
half
than seven
feet.
and a half feet on the fastball, which is insane.
Yeah, it's like Jacob Misiorowski level, except he's not 6'7", like top 5 type in all of baseball, which helps his stuff play up, especially from that lower release height. Fastball sitting 92, 95. He'll, flash a 7 or maybe an 8 every now and then, but you can see the room that he has left on his frame where
Mhm.
there's probably another gear of velocity in there. The slider flashes plus. The changeup is not great. That's a pitch that has to come along, but he threw strikes. So, um, like Letson versus Harden. Letson's 3 years younger. The stuff is good with both of them. I think Letson has a more upside in terms of what the stuff can still become. So I have Letson ahead, but the big thing for him is he's going to have to prove his
Yeah.
durability.
Well, he has a very exciting arm, surrounded by a lot of talented hitters. I'm going to let you touch on whoever else you want to mention in this Brewer system before we move on, because we have spent some time here, but I think it is worth spending time on some of the systems we believe are the very best in the game, and that is the Brewers.
Well, the catchers, I had probably the hardest time placing the 2 catchers, particularly, I mean, Jeferson. I'm talking about Jeferson Quero and Marco Dinges,
Hmm.
especially Jefferson Quero. Like, you ever just get those players, Carlos, where like you're just squirming in your chair, agonizing about where to rank them because
Yes.
there's just so much uncertainty about them, or something that's is like this very divisive part of
Mhm.
their game that's a question mark that makes it so hard to know what to do with them. Like that's
Yeah, especially for I get that routinely, and in particular for specific profiles that have caused me pain in the past, or who I like regret maybe what I've done with those profiles in the past. I think everyone who listens to this podcast knows how uh, how wary I am of like center field defenders with questionable contact skills. Those in particular give me trouble. But yeah, it sounds like this catching dilemma for you was a tricky one between
well,
Dingus and Quero.
especially with Jefferson Quero, because it sucks because his first game of the 2024 season on a play where he's running the bases, he hurts his shoulder,
Yeah.
torn labrum, needs surgery. It's his throwing arm, so he misses the 2024 season. Comes back this year, spends some time rehabbing a hamstring injury. By the end of it, offensively, he looks like the same guy that he did before the injury. Aggressive hitter. He'll chase more than he should, but he can crush a fastball, hit for some power. It's a good offensive profile, excuse me, for a catcher. So I think I have a pretty good sense of like who Jefferson Quero is right now
Hmm.
as a hitter. Defensively, before the injury, he might have been the best defensive catching prospect in the minors, or at least in that conversation. I mean, receiving, blocking, a 70 arm, all the intangibles that teams love to have in a catcher. You could see him being a plus defender. You could see him winning a gold glove. But then this year, the arm strength had just disappeared. And that's obviously what you're concerned about when somebody has shoulder surgery. He had a 70 arm before, and this year, a lot of his throws were a 30 arm. Sometimes it was a 40 arm, flashy a 45 arm, but he never had a throw above 79 miles an hour. Most of his pop times were above 2 seconds. So you see it in the caught stealing. He threw out 17% of runners this year. The arm strength is just where, like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with Jefferson Quero because with pitchers, we're used to, or we used to at least see a lot more of these of pitchers get shoulder surgery, get overused and tear their labrum. And when they would have shoulder surgery, like that was it. They were cooked.
Right.
And other guys have come back from it. And the hope in the optimistic case is like, hey, he's going to be another year further removed from the operation. Then hopefully more arm strength comes back. So if you told me, Ben, I guarantee you that in 2026, Jefferson Quero is going to be throwing with not even a 70 arm, but say a 55 arm, I would have him higher, and I would say he's a top 100 prospect.
Right.
But if he's back out there in 2026 throwing the way that he did this year, then I don't know. I'm not sure what exactly you have. I mean, it's a big leaguer, but the other defensive components are still there, but the throwing's gone from one of his greatest strengths to a
Right.
significant question mark. And on the offensive side, it's a good bat for a catching prospect, but it's also not the type of offensive game where you're like, wow, like he's so good offensively, we can live with some defensive questions. More,
Hmm.
a guy who's going to hit probably 6 to 9 in your lineup. So it's just a really tough one for me where there's a lot to like, but a lot of risk that hinges on the strength and health of that throwing arm.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned Marco Dingus in this conversation as well. He's got some questions of his own. It's not like he's this slam dunk, but he does seem to have like the prototypical sort of catcher tools that you see a lot at the majors, between the power that he has, the arm strength that he has. But one, is he going to hit enough? And two, is he going to just catch and defend at a high enough level to stick at the position?
Yeah, I had a tough time. They're back to back in our rankings. If Quero is still having trouble throwing next year, then Dinges belongs ahead of him.
Mhm.
Dinges has, like you said, his own question marks about catching, but fourth round pick out of Florida State a year ago. Great season at the plate this year. Great in low A. Just too advanced, really, for that league as a college guy. Um, but in high A, he goes there 51 games, 273, 471, 483. It's outstanding bat speed, plus raw power. It's some of the best power in the organization. It comes with a high intensity swing, and it can get long at times. So there's some questions about how that's going to play against better pitching, but he's not a high strikeout guy.
Mhm.
There's a lot to like offensively with Marco Dinges. The bigger question, I think, is where does he ultimately play? It might be catcher. It might also be left field. He didn't catch much in college, and that lack of experience you can see this year. And when he was behind the plate, the raw arm strength is there for the position, but the blocking needs improvement. Other areas of the defensive game you can see lack that crispness. Christmas. I don't think that's part of his report, but I hope he does catch because the potential is there for a great offensive weapon behind the plate. If he is a right-handed hitting corner outfielder, that I think that's still a big leaguer in some role. It would quiet the overall value if he does have to move out from
Mhm.
behind the plate.
Yeah, and I mean, if you guys were listening to this and just skeptical about what he can do defensively, just again, I think routinely pro development teams do a really good job improving catcher defense. Like, this is the one area we consistently see improved
Especially the
significantly. And
Brewers.
you talk about, yeah, and you talk about just the lack of experience he had at the position before. That almost makes me more excited about what he can potentially be now that he's like focused on it full time with really advanced pro level instruction. So yeah, yet another fun one in this Brewers top 10. I feel like it's a good sign of how talented your system is when you take a first round SEC hitter who was one of the better hitters in the nation in your most recent draft, and they slot in at the very back of the list at number 10. That's where Andrew Fischer cracks. So, in a number of other systems, Andrew Fischer would be ranked much more prominently in his new organization.
Yeah, Fisher. I mean, you got like him, Luke Adams, Brock Wilken, Blake Burke, these big power bats. I think you can
Mhm.
make a compelling case for Adams to. I think so. There are people certainly who would say he's a top five, top six prospect
Right.
in the system. He's had success at Double A, whereas Fisher, he hasn't yet. He just got drafted this year. He's younger, I think, the two than Fisher, but and maybe they ultimately end up at first base, both of them. But I was pleasantly surprised by the way Fisher defended
Yeah.
this year when he got
He
into Pro Bowl at third
his
base.
his pro ball reviews much better on the defensive side, and then less exciting batted ball data than I would expect for someone whose batted ball data was like green flags across the board in college. So
I think there was
See what
some
happens with that.
little injury with him too that may have
Yeah, that'd be
impacted. So
good.
we'll see what it is next year. But yeah, a little more natural and a left-handed bat, but not that I put a ton of stock into that, but
Hmm.
more conventional swing with him, better chance of playing third base. Well, he might ultimately play first base, and they will ultimately be like a platoon together at
Hmm.
at first base. So yeah, there's those guys like Brady Ebel, Braylon Payne,
Hmm.
Dorchies. Like there's a lot of good guys beyond their top 10 that
Hmm.
we we'll spend some more time talking about them some other time.
Yeah.